भार्येति वा वोढुम् इदस्पतिर्माम् सत्यं सुरुच्या विहितं भवान् मे यद्धुर्भाग्ये उदरे गृहीतः स्तन्येन वेदाश्च विलाज्यते यम् भार्येति वा वोढुम् इदस्पतिर्माम्. I would like to sing 19th as well because there is something special in 19th verse. So let's chant that also together because most of you are using your mobile. I don't mind reading again. Atishta tatha vimatsarastvam uktam samatrapi yad avyalikam आराधयतोक्षजा पादपद्मम् यदिच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा अतिष्ठथा तथा विमत्सरस्त्वम् उक्तं समात्रापि यद् अव्यलिकाम् आराधय दोक्षजपादपद्मम् यदिच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा. Third time. Finish. अतिष्ठता तत्तव विमत्सरस्त्वम् उक्तं समात्रापि यद् अव्यलिकम् आराधय दोक्षजपादपद्मम् यदीच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यतः. Prabhuji's. Sorry, Prabhu. Can you read 19? 19. Atishtatat tapimatsarastvam Uktam samatrapi yad avyalikam आराधया दोक्षजपादपद्मम् यदीच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा. अतिष्ठतत् तत विमत्सरस्त्वम् उक्तं समात्रापि यद् अव्यलिकम् पादपद्मम् यदीच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा. अतिष्ठता तद विमत्सरस्त्वम् उक्तं समात्रापि यद् अव्यलिकम् आराधयो दोक्षपादपद्मम् यदीच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा. अतिष्ठता तत्विमत्सरस्त्वम् उक्तं समात्रापि यद् अव्यलिकम् आराधय दोक्षजपादपद्मम् Yadi chasedyasanam uttamo yataha. Thank you. Synonyms. Atishta, just execute. Tat, that. Tata, my dear son. Vimatsara, without being envious. Tvam, unto you. Uktam, said. Samatrapi, by your stepmother. Yat, whatever. Avyalikam, they are all factual. Aradhya, just begin worshipping. Adokshaja, the transcendence. Pada Padmam, lotus feet. Yadi, if. Ichase, desire. Adhyasanam, to be seated along with. Uttama, your stepbrother. Yata, as much as. Translation. So before I go into verse 19 translation, I would like to read translation for verse 18. Suniti said, my dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi is so, because the king, your father, does not consider me his wife or even his maidservant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore, this is a fact that you have taken birth from the womb of an unfortunate woman, and by being fed from her breast you have grown up. Translation for verse 19. My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your stepbrother Uttama, then give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instructions of your stepmother. Without further delay, you must engage yourself in worshipping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The harsh words used by Suruchi to her stepson were true, because unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve any success in life. Man proposes, God disposes. Suniti, mother of Dhruva Maharaj, agreed with her co-wife's advice that Dhruva engage himself in the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indirectly, the words of Suruchi were a benediction for Dhruva Maharaj, for because of the influence of his stepmother's words, he became a great devotee. So, as we all know, we are going through Dhruva Maharaj's pastime, and do we know the story? I'll give a quick recap. Uttanapad was the king, he's son of Manu. He had two wives, Suruchi and Suniti. So Uttama is the son of Suruchi, and Dhruva is son of Suniti. So when a king usually lives with Suruchi, and when Suruchi was playing with his son Uttama, the other son Dhruva also wanted to sit on lap of his father, so he also wanted to go reach out to his father, sit on his lap. But Suruchi, seeing this, she didn't like it, because his son is already sitting on king's lap. So Suruchi was very angry. She was like, Dhruva, why are you sitting on my husband's lap? If you have to sit on the king's lap, then pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In your next birth, maybe you will get a chance to be born in my womb. So such aggressive words hurt young Dhruva's heart. So what happened? Dhruva cried, and also what pained him even more is that king didn't utter a word. So he ran to his mother and he took shelter of her. Suniti also didn't know what to do. We would have learned from the previous verses that she's also helpless. She also doesn't know what to do. But what she acknowledges is whatever Suruchi said is fact. She says in verse 18 that my father doesn't consider, I mean, my husband, your father doesn't consider me as a wife or even a maid servant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore, it's a fact that you have to take birth from my womb, and he would not accept you because I'm an unfortunate woman and I am feeding you. You're grown up by me, so he doesn't like you. But alternatively, what she says is, my dear boy, whatever your stepmother has said is true. So even though it's very harsh, it is true. So take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and try to pray to Him for whatever you want, and the Supreme Lord will give you shelter. So this was in a very hard state that this young boy, who is at a very small age, had to accept, and his mother is also helpless. She had no clue, but she guides him to go to Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the purport here also says that the harsh words used by Suruchi to her stepson were true, because unless one is favored by Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot obtain any success. And so she sends her son, and as we all know, when Dhruva leaves home and goes to the forest, Narad Muni comes, he gives advice to Dhruva, and Dhruva takes up the penance and austerity, lives in the forest, and at the end, he gets a glance of Supreme Personality of Godhead. We know that. So, before I was going through Narayani Mataji's lecture, where she says an example which actually goes together with the scenario that we have here today. So she mentions that when they were in Vrindavan, they were doing puja, they were doing their services to the deities. It seems the caste brahmanas who were seeing them worship the deities so nicely, they came up to them and said, you are doing deity worship very nicely, you are doing puja very nicely. See, in your next birth, you will also get an opportunity to be born as a Brahmana and you can worship. Just like how Suniti mentioned it to Dhruva, this is what they got to know, and they felt a bit upset. They went and stood up to Srila Prabhupada and explained, this is what we heard from this caste Brahmana today. Prabhupada said, go tell them that they are doing their worship, deity worship very nicely, and if they continue to do so, they will be born as an ISKCON devotee and they can serve the deities very nicely. So these were going on, but Srila Prabhupada also mentioned to the devotees to actually tolerate such silly offenses that are committed to the devotees and to accept them. So similar scenario we would have seen when Arjuna is in the battlefield. He is actually ready to tolerate all the problems or all the offenses that Kurus had been posing on them. But what does Krishna say? Krishna asks him to fight. He said, I have done all the duties for you, Arjuna. You be there and fight. So it's like, anybody and everybody can't offend devotees, and Krishna will not take it lightly. Especially to devotees, Krishna takes it seriously. Suruchi also actually gets punishment for her behavior. Even though Dhruva at that point of time was not a devotee, still she gets the punishment. There is, as we know, there are 4 types of aparadhas, right? What is nama aparadh? Offenses against the holy name. What is seva aparadh is? Offenses against the deities or lordships. Offenses against the lotus feet of devotees is called Vaishnava aparadh. What's the other one? Even if they are not devotees, but an unjust act is done to the individual spirit soul, we still consider it as a aparadh. So that's the 4th aparadh. So we know that Suruchi's son was killed by yakshas. Who was yakshas? Yes, they were the yakshas were the sons of Kuberas, and they were usually, it is said that yakshas live in Kailash, and that's why not everybody can climb Kailash mountain. We are able to climb Mount Everest, Himalayas and any other mountain, but not Kailash, it seems, because yakshas pull people down. So Dhruva at one point of time went to kill all the yakshas. Then Dhruva was questioned, hey, it was only one yaksha who killed Suruchi's son Uttama, but why are you going around killing every yaksha? So like this, anybody who's offended gets a serious punishment either in this life or after we die also. And there is chances that we get punished for our activities. So in this way we can say, one might be asking, why am I suffering now? It is maybe because of our past karma, whatever we have done, that we are suffering. So we get an answer that in this life or in our past lives that we have done something wrong, and the actions or reactions we are getting in this life. So that's how we can understand this. And it seems like even the aprad, when we think about aprad, even if we actually see a person doing sinful activities, and if we criticize them, say for example, if somebody is taking alcohol and we criticize them, it seems we get the same reaction as the person who is taking the alcohol, it seems. And if the person is doing the mistake and we tell it, we get the same reaction. But if the person is not doing a mistake and we actually criticize the person, then we get double the reaction. So that's how serious aparadha is. And a lot of times we find faults, we start criticizing people, we count the mistakes of others. That can be compared to as though we are working in Chitragupta's court or Yamaraj's court, because that's what they do, right? They count the mistakes of others, they tally it when we go back, and they'll say, good, these are the good activities that you have done, bad activities you have done, and accordingly we get judged, we are sent to heaven or hell. So it is up to us to decide whether we want to count the mistakes of others, find fault, and be in Yamaraj's court, or alternatively we have a path which Nityananda shows us, which is to be sharing the mercy, giving mercy to even people like Jagai and Madai. So we can find that even now there are a lot of Jagais and Madais. So we can preach to them, we can help this Nityananda in executing his mission and helping him in his practices. So an example which comes to our mind when speaking about aparadha or committing offenses is, you would have heard, like in a village close to Vrindavana, there lived a Brahmana on one side of the street and there used to be a prostitute on the other side of the street. As a daily observance, the Brahmana would actually sit down, read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and maybe even cook for the deities, sing for the deities, and he is known for his cooking skills. And he would offer to the deities, and he would be doing his regular activities. At the same time, as years passed, he started observing what this other lady on the other side, the prostitute, was doing on the other side of the road, and started being critical about what she's doing with her body. She's wasting her life, not thinking about Krishna, and he started taking more pride in whatever he was doing, but actually thinking the other person as very low. And this was a continuous activity that he was doing, that he meditated upon the lowly activities that the lady was performing. And it so happened that at one point of time, both Brahmana and the prostitute had to leave the body. And to Brahmana's surprise, Yamatuda had approached to take him. He was like, hey, why are you taking me? I didn't do any mistake. But Yamatuda has explained that even though you did all your rituals, but your consciousness and your meditation was on the lowly activity of the prostitute. So that is why we are here. So your constant meditation on the lowly activity has brought you to this state. So when you see on the other side, the prostitute was actually welcomed by Vishnutudas. What is the reason? Because she, being on the other side of the road, would appreciate the daily meditation that this Brahmana is doing, constantly meditating on the lordships, reading and chanting and singing and cooking for the lordships, inspired her, and she actually wanted to be like the Brahmana. And constant meditation on the activities of a devotee actually made Vishnu Tudas come to her, and she was received very nicely, and she was taken back to heaven. So this itself shows that how much of our constant meditation of anarthas of others actually puts us down. And a constant meditation on the devotees actually helps us improve our consciousness. So we try as much as possible to avoid criticizing devotees. So we should think, okay, so long we have been seeing of how we should be when criticizing somebody. The example is Suniti. Because we take the role model from Bhagavatam, right? So Suruchi is actually criticizing Dhruva. So here we take example of Suruchi of how not to be critical of others. And that's what we have discussed. And this is very close to our heart because it's very easy for us to criticize anybody and everybody. Because that comes from our false ego, that we know something better than others. So we easily we easily criticize others, we take pride in doing so by correcting somebody. It's a sense of controllership also, that we think we know everything, we can say something and get things done. It's coming from that Suruchi's motive and intention. So whenever we think of being critical of somebody, we have to think twice. Am I taking the positive and addressing the positive nature of the devotee, or am I being critical? Am I trying to control over somebody, or am I trying to share my pride and things like that? So that's what we can take from this. On the other side, if you look at the example of Dhruva and Suniti, what did they do? They accepted the criticism. So one side is how we should not be critical, that we learn as devotees. But it so happens that we, as much as possible, we try not to criticize others, but the world is such that either we criticize others, or either we welcome criticism, or we get criticized. Both things happen. It's not one way, right? So we get criticized. And how did they accept criticism? They accepted the criticism, they acknowledged it, whatever had come from Suruchi, and they took it as a way to improve themselves. So they went to the forest, they took, Dhruva took the guidance of Narad Muni, took guidance from him, and started chanting the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this was the mantra which was given to Dhruva, and Dhruva constantly meditated and chanted this until he saw Gopinath face to face. So we can find that how in offices also we find managers or our colleagues might be very critical of others. So how do we take steps to handle this criticism effectively, right? Day in and day out, somebody has to criticize us, and we have to accept that. How do we take it or manage that effectively? First thing is, we have to acknowledge our error. I know it's very humbling activity if we have to acknowledge what we did is wrong. Even more hard is to take full responsibility and not to blame the other person back. And if it is appropriate, if the criticism is appropriate, is even more harder to say, I am sorry, that this is what my mistake had led to this result. We should say, it seems. Again, we ask, and we should say that next time I'll try to improve my performance next time, we should say. So this acknowledging is the first part. And second thing is taking corrective action. So we allow the person who's criticized us again to speak more, tell us what other wrong things we have done, hear it out from them completely. So then we can Okay, we'll understand what our problem is, and then we'll be able to um, do corrective actions and counterbalance our previous error. We should give some examples of what you could do better next time from what we from understanding what we have committed wrong this time. So that is like second step, we take corrective action. First is acknowledging one's error, and second is by hearing out all our problem, we take corrective actions for it. And third is we have to acknowledge the other person's motive also. So in this case, Suruchi, she said two things, right? One, she said is positive, which is to take shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Second, she said, you have to be born in my womb to be in the king's lap. So we take the Dhruva took the positive. So similarly, if your boss or your colleague or your relatives or friends are telling you something, criticizing you, you try to understand the most positive part from it and leave the negatives, so we can slowly improve from where we are at. And that's an essential quality of a leader. We think, oh, if we accept my mistake, people might consider me inferior, right? No, it's not usually the case at all. I mean, people would be confident, oh, the person is able to take corrective actions, the person is accepting the mistake. One must be a good leader. So he or she is able to accept the mistake. And so as you can see, many of the people who are now in big positions, it could be a famous actor, maybe Jackie Chan, or maybe Oprah Winfrey, whoever is conducting the talk shows, right? They all have gone through criticisms day in and day out when they have started their journey. And maybe even when they are on top of their ladder, they would still have criticisms. Otherwise, how are they able to grow? They had stepped in these processes of acknowledging the mistakes, getting corrective actions from people who have criticized, and step by step they have come up in their life is because of constant criticism. Some people actually take critical feedbacks, they pay and get critical feedback so to improve themselves, and such people have become great leaders. And that's what we can learn in this scenario also. So we understand the person's motive, and then we demonstrate that how we can better from our mistakes and get clearer, get better from our mistakes and become a better person. So we have understood now from Suruchi's example how not to be critical of others. And if we are criticized, from Dhruva's and Suniti's examples, we have found out how we can accept criticism also. And how do we know if the person who is giving comments or criticisms are coming from good intentions, or are their instructions good? So materially, if you see, like people who don't follow Krishna consciousness are envious, but still there will be some good instructions coming from material people as well. So how do we distinguish, how do we balance what is right, what is wrong? If any of the instructions which is coming to you takes you closer to Krishna, then it's a good instruction. But if the instructions which are coming to you are taking you away from Krishna, then it's a bad instruction. Say for example, book distributors goes on the streets, they distribute books. So a person who on the street, he comes and says, so this particular person who was distributing books, he was like, how am I to get money quickly from this person? He was very anxious to get money from this person, right? So his mood was, get the money, finish off the transaction, go away. But this material person observing this person had said, why are you so anxious to get money from, why are you so attached to the results? Then it struck him like, okay, so I'm being attached to the results, so I have to take a step back. And because obviously devotee thinks and understands what he's done, and he actually changes his mood. Next time he goes and he shows a different behavior, then the transaction or the relationship between the person and the recipient of the book becomes much more easier. So a devotee understands that these are instructions coming from Krishna. I have to rectify the mistake, and I have to change the way I look at things, change the mood. So that's how, as devotees, we improve, and that's the way to go. Whereas on the other hand, we go on the streets distributing books. People are like, don't you have a job? Go get a job. Why they say that? Because they are working hard, and we, even though we are working hard, they don't understand it. They think we're getting easy money. So they see us getting money, so they feel like, oh, this person is not doing anything, he's getting money. So those are envious people. So does it mean that we have to leave book distribution and go get a job and do our own stuff? No. That's a activity, compassionate activity. We are trying to share scriptures with others. So whatever criticisms we take, in that sense, we take it. So there we are going, if we don't do our job, then we are going away from Krishna. So that's not a good criticism. So in this way you can distinguish what's good and what is bad. It seems in times, those times when Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, devotees used to go on streets in large number. They used to take vans, they used to go on harinams, and they used to have lot of flats as well. So neighbors were like, how come these people, they don't work, they distribute books, they go on harinam, they still enjoy. And this went to Srila Prabhupada's ears, and then Srila Prabhupada mentioned, ask them to come and join us, they can also enjoy like us. So there was another devotee's father who was actually retiring. At the age of 77, he actually took his son to his farewell party. He said, I'm 77 now, I have been working so hard for the last 50 years. So now I'm retiring, but my son is very intelligent, he's retiring at the age of 17. And in that ways, we can see even material people can give good comments, and they are intelligent, so they know they can pass good instructions to devotees. And another thing that struck me from the purport is that there was a mention there about man proposes, God disposes. So it's basically the desire that we have. When we express it to Krishna, then he decides whether can be sanctioned or not sanctioned. But when we were non-devotees, or when we sometimes want to lord over the nature, what we do, and this is an era where we are actually searching for peace, and we are affected either bodily or mentally or materially in our society. So we are all searching for that peace formula. What is that peace formula? We'll find out. So the things is that, like a famous actor said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. So we make so many plans in this material world. We have our senses, we try to engage them in different engagements, not having the knowledge of how to engage our senses. So when our senses are engaged, then it leads to lust, and ultimately greed. And if the greed is not satisfied, then we get anger. So these are qualities which would take us away from Krishna. So what do we do to rectify these? So we should engage our senses as mentioned in the scriptures. So we follow Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. So we can find out that by engaging our senses in the worship of Krishna or in the service of Krishna, then we can engage it in the right manner, and that's how we should go about it. And we find that in our society that we are all propelled by lust, like we can ask, why are there so many abortions? That's because of greed for sex life. And why are there so many overdose of drugs and intoxication? Again, it's because of greed. Then why is there so much production happening in the factories? It's because of consumerism. So many mobiles, so many laptops, so many things, whether we need it or we don't need it, we try to accumulate it. There is also so much pollution. People cut corners, they want to save money, they put all unnecessary chemicals in the water. Again, there is pollution. Why? They want to save money. Why do we also lock the doors in the night? We know that thieves can come, and what's the meaning? That he wants to take something from us. It's because of his greed, right? So we are all, armed with this greed. We as individuals make so many plans, and we want to advance our facilities, we want to make more money, we want to make more luxury, we have more travel plans, and there is does this result in we being peaceful at the end of the day? Not at all. So we have to see what is it that gives us peace. So in all our efforts in making money or in making the facility which we use for communication, if we add Krishna in the picture, then we'll be able to be on the right track, and then we are engaging our senses properly. Then our lust or greed or anger can be engaged appropriately. Prabhupada always says, when an elephant in the forest can get food, or when an ant in a crevice can get food, why are we actually endeavoring so much to get that same food, right? But it's all because of a greed that we want. So we can take that from an example of Dhruva Maharaj here. He was also very, very materialistic, but by being engaged in the process of devotional service, he actually gets purified, and at the end he sees the Lord. So this is a perfect example which is being quoted in the Shastras, that even if one is materialistic but we still engage our senses in the worship of the Lord, then we can correct ourselves and get into the path of bhakti. And we can purify ourselves, and at one stage we can go back home, back to Godhead. That's basically it. So thank you all for your kind attention. Any questions, comments, feedback? Yes. Because of greed. Why do people drink, basically? Okay. So they want to enjoy the senses. So whatever happiness that they are getting in their life, they are not satisfied with it. So they want to have intoxication. They want to have more alcohol. They want to enjoy more of the senses. They want to give more pleasure to themselves. Why are they not happy with coconut water or juice? Why should they go for more? They want to satisfy their senses. The more they satisfy their senses, they want to go for more. They want more greed. They are very greedy. Yeah, they want to give more pleasure. Why are we going on travel? Why we are not happy here, right? We make plans to go on vacation because we are not satisfied. But once we engage ourselves in the services of the Lordships, then maybe at some point of time all that activities to give pleasure to oneself would go. So that's the attempt we are making to purify ourselves. We are also conditioned for so many years to give pleasure to our senses, and that is the reason why we are all here. Otherwise we would be with Krishna to give pleasure for him. Yep.
Even though we live in present, how does reality makes sense in our Krishna consciousness?
Even though we are living in present,
How does reality make sense?
how does the reality?
Reality, like how everything is around, like how does it make sense, like in an answer of Krishna consciousness?
Can you explain a bit more? I didn't get it.
So you're living like how we are right now inside this room. Maybe your mind might be elsewhere,
Mm.
and you're thinking this really happening, what's happening in here. I mean, it's all like positive things, right? But is it really happening? Kind of, you have that doubt, and like, how does it
Yeah, constant focus. By having constant focus that you are in here, you will be you'll make yourself aware that you're here, and you'll know that this is reality. Yeah. Okay, no problem. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Thank you. Hare Krishna.